Fantastic, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening and tonight's meeting of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent. Thanks very much. My name is Councillor Westgold and I'm Chair of this committee. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to my left is Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillor Shima Ibuki, Councillor Sophie Tournay, our Mayor, Councillor Michael Nolan, got to be formal, and Councillor Felicity Sinfield. On the other side of the chamber is Councillor Victor Franco, Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith, Councillor Rob Ballew, and Councillor John Friend Pereira. I acknowledge at the front desk Coordinator Governance Kirsten Ritchie on my left and Director Urban Living Mr Scott Walker on my right. There are other officers in attendance tonight and they'll be introduced as they start to speak. Just some general introduction. The Urban Planning Delegated Committee is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube to permit public viewing. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on Council's YouTube as soon as practicable after the meeting. The primary purpose of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee is to deal with issues under the Planning and Environment Act and the Building Act. This committee has delegated authority to make decisions on behalf of Council. For those presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer and then I will call you one by one to come forward and join us at the horseshoe table. If you are making a submission, please present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the application. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the submission focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you're opposed to the planning application, please tell the committee why you disagree and suggest an alternative approach that would satisfy your concerns. Please focus on your concerns and not matters of history or details in the officer's report. There is a strict 3-minute limit for all speakers, including councillors, and whilst as chair I can vary this, it is seldom done. At the 2.5-minute mark, I will ring that bell, and which indicates you are 30 seconds left to complete your submission. For those in the gallery this evening, I would like to take this opportunity to remind you to extend due courtesy and respect to each other and to the committee as a whole and refrain from any inappropriate behaviour. And just to finish, I would like to encourage all submitters, officers and councillors to speak directly into the microphone so that we may all hear clearly what you're saying. Moving on to apologies. Ms Ritchie, are there any apologies this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, there is one apology for tonight's meeting, Councillor Pattis.
Thank you. I will now move to the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm these minutes? Councillor Ballew.
So moved, Chair.
Do we have a seconder?
A question, if I may.
Far away.
I cannot find the minutes in the portal, but I have found them on the website, so just a note for governance. But I am happy to second if no one else wishes to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Is anyone opposed? There is no one. I will now put the motion. All of those in favour? The motion is carried. We'll now move to declaration of conflict of interest from councillors or council officers. Council officers, are there any conflicts of interest that you wish to foreshadow for the matters in the agenda tonight? There are none. Thank you. We will now move to the body of the meeting. Item 4.1, 39 Barton Street, Hawthorn, amendments to a cafe patron numbers, trading hours and liquor trading service, PP 17-0 01316.03. Councillor Baillieu, you have a comment to make?
Just would like to move a procedural motion, Chair, to move to the next item on the agenda. As I understand it, this application is subject to some potential future changes, and I'd like to give us a bit of time to review those changes prior to any further discussion tonight.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Tournay.
Happy to second, Chair.
Fantastic. Can we put that to, anyone opposed? We'll now put it to the vote. All of those in support? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We will now move that item forward, and we move directly on to item 4.2. For those in the gallery, do you understand what's just happened? We have postponed discussion, presentation, etc. on that item to a later council meeting. Thank you. We now move on to item 4.2, 209 Cotham Road Q, PPP 21-0621.01. Amendment to enable hospital to charge for on-site car parking. Tonight, a report will be presented by Lucy Johnson, Coordinator, Urban Planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A request has been made to amend an existing planning permit for the land at 209 Cotham Road in Kew to introduce paid car parking. The existing permit allows the land to be used for a private hospital above basement car parking in a neighbourhood residential zone. The existing permit, the proposed amendment, seeks approval to amend condition 17 of that permit, which requires car parking to be free of charge. The amendment would enable the introduction of paid car parking for patients and visitors after 2 hours and a daily rate for hospital staff. The amendment is sought to discourage the car park being accessed by the broader public for longer term car parking. The proposed pricing structure is above. Noting staff would be charged via a salary sacrifice arrangement up to $5 a day. 13 objections were received to the proposal, with key issues including that the paid parking may lead to the continuation of cars parking all day outside our homes, reducing visibility, access by ourselves, family and friends, that 2 hours free parking is insufficient for the majority of day procedures at the hospital, that it is unlikely the general public are utilising the hospital car park. Other management systems could be implemented on site to address this issue, and the onus must be on the hospital to provide sufficient car parking on site. It is therefore recommended that a notice of refusal to grant an amended permit is issued, having regard to visitors, patients and staff being more likely to prefer on-street parking than making payment for parking on site, which would increase pressure on parking availability and which could increase pressure on parking availability and adversely impact our residential streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tonight, we have 2 people in the gallery who wish to make submissions, one against and one in support of the officer's recommendation. Once I've announced your name, please come forward and sit at the head of the horseshoe table. If someone isn't present, I'll move straight on. And I just remind you to keep your submissions within the 3-minute limit. And I'd ask you to please start your submissions with your name and the suburb in which you live. Can I call upon Lisa Stubbs to come forward and join us? Do we have Lisa Stubbs in the... Oh. Ms. Stubbs, if you could start with just confirming your name and where you live, the suburb.
Lisa Stubbs, I'm a town planning consultant. Our office is based in Carlton.
Terrific, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you councillors for the opportunity to speak tonight. Lou O'Connor, who's the CEO of the hospital, wasn't able to leave the hospital tonight, so I'm here on her behalf. We have read the officer's report in relation to this amendment to the planning permit. We're proposing to amend the permit to allow for an element of parking, paid parking at the hospital. Parking will remain free for visitors and patients up to 2 hours. The charges will start beyond 2 hours, and there'll be a $5 daily rate for staff that will be done through a salary sacrifice arrangement and swipe card access. You might have seen the hospital last week on the ABC. It's a really innovative healthcare model. The majority of the hospital is owned by 42 doctors. They're in a consortium. The balance of the hospital is owned by Medibank Private. And for Medibank Private and Bupa patients, they don't have any gap fees associated with their hospital stay. It's, encourage you to look up the ABC article. It's really very interesting. So it's a very short stay hospital. A lot of day patients and inpatients have average length of stay of less than 2 days. Day patients, a matter of hours. So there aren't typically lots of people coming to this hospital day in, day out for drop-offs and pick-up. It's a very, it's a low-key use. There's no casualty facilities, there's no emergency department, there's no critical care facilities. So in the local streets, there's a 250-metre walk to the nearest unrestricted car parking. And in that context, you can imagine doctors coming during the day. They're transitioning between different hospitals, seeing patients. Sometimes they're going from one hospital to deal with an emergency situation at another. And so the convenience of the parking on the site is probably what's going to drive their decisions about where to park. The $5 daily rate through a salary sacrifice arrangement, very convenient way for them to deal with their day-to-day work. There's about 270 vacancies on the local street network. And so you can have that proportion. It's a really low number of spaces that would be used. So we say that there's no major amenity impact arising from the amendments that have been put forward to council. It's a long-standing hospital site, and we appreciate reconsideration of the officer's report and recommendation.
Thank you very much, Ms Stubbs. Councillors, are there any questions of this presenter tonight? Councillor Tournay.
Thank you for your presentation. Quick question, you said doctors as staff, but are there other staff as well who'll be using the car park who would be using it?
Yes.
Who are there all day?
Correct.
So they might, do you think they might tend to walk the 250 metres to not pay?
It's possible. I can't say that they definitely won't, but the convenience of having secure, safe parking, especially when you're arriving early in the morning. Surgery often starts really early in the day. It could be dark, raining, inclement weather, or finishing the shifts late at night. I think that security on site would be welcome. Cool.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Could you, I'm scanning through the report and just looking for any information on what the current usage rate of the car park is. Would you have any information on that?
I haven't got any to hand. The hospital's only recently opened, so I suspect as it winds up and, you know, the theatres and procedure and day patients get going, it's not something that's instantly available from day one, I'm sorry.
And a follow-up question is, there are often two, or can be multiple reasons, I guess, for introducing price controls on things. From the hospital standpoint, is this seen as revenue generation, or is this about controlling access to the car park, or is it for some other reason?
I think it's probably both of those things. As I said, there's no gap payments for any patients who are coming to stay there. It's a very lean operation to begin with, given the model, the framework of the hospital's financial model. I think there's, as I said, an element of security and convenience that sits alongside that, and $5 for a whole day of parking isn't a large amount of money when you compare it to what some other hospitals charge in the suburbs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Tournay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
complete your questions.
Can I ask one more follow-up?
Yes. Fire away.
So if a pricing structure was introduced, the hospital wouldn't restrict non-visitors and non-patients from using it if they paid the full daily rate or a part thereof?
From memory, I think there's a condition on the permit that the car parking is for the hospital and the medical uses. It's not a public car park.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. It's a similar follow-up question about how the car park could be managed to avoid the use of that car park by ordinary members of the public, such as commuters. Could you explain how that could be managed? I think perhaps by the boom gate system, or is it a pass, or can you explain how that would work?
So the staff car parking, which is the daily rate, would come with a swipe card. So that'll be scan in, scan out, and that's helpful for the hospital to track usage attributed to a particular individual. In terms of preventing commuter car parking, I would have thought that there would be some signage at the entrance near the boom gate that would prevent that. I can't imagine commuter parking in this location with someone driving here and getting on a tram here and then continuing 40 minutes into the CBD. I can't imagine that that's an attractive proposition to the public. And I don't think anyone would look there and think I need parking for the day. Yeah, I'm not sure that would be a very common occurrence.
Thank you.
Councillor Rabuki.
Thank you for your presentation also. Can I just ask whether you have considered perhaps reserving a portion of the car park, having it accessed via, a boom gate and maybe a permit system at no cost to staff?
So at the moment, the permit requires the car parking to be made free of charge, and it's accessible. It's very accessible. This amendment seeking to introduce the payment with a protection mechanism, the boom gate or swipe card access. So it's not that we haven't considered it. I suppose it's what we've already got, and this is advancing the amendments that have been put forward to the planning department.
Councillor Tornay, you've got another question?
I do. Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm just struggling if the hospital's just opened and the planning permit specifically said that the car park had to be free parking. I'm struggling to see why, without having the data as to why we need that, because it hasn't been running for long enough, why the applications come in now.
Yeah, so I think that, well, the model that's been developed, as I said, it's a very lean model, and so the hospital has identified this as a way of securing its car park and creating some structured arrangements for its staff and their salary arrangements. So those things need to be bedded down early. And I think part of the other thing is when you're operating a hospital with these day procedures, you actually need to attract doctors to come and perform their procedures at your hospital. So there's a whole sort of separate business case around attracting doctors, broadening services, and getting patients in through the door. There's a real scaling up of activities. So you're coming from experienced medical practitioners, and Lou, the hospital CEO, who are running hospitals. They've been involved in the system for a really long time, so it's something they've envisaged as being necessary. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's at peak capacity from day one. These things scale up over time. Yeah.
Ms Stubbs, that appears to have exhausted questions. You can return to the gallery now. Thanks very much. I now call upon Elizabeth Mackenzie to join us at the table.
Good evening, Council. My name's Elizabeth Mackenzie and I'm a resident of Aideney Avenue Q.
Thank you.
I probably live 250 metres from the hospital.
Thank you.
I attended a meeting run by the doctors who were proposing to build the hospital very early on. And at that time, neighbours, residents, local residents were assured that the hospital would provide ample parking for everyone who needed to use the hospital, and that it would have very little impact on the local area. Once the building started in the street, it was really a very difficult time for the people in the street. You couldn't park outside our house. Our house is just at the start of the unlimited parking, and that was a pretty messy period. Going up to Cotham Road, wanting to turn left or right was really difficult. So it was quite a moment for the people in the street, I think, sort of getting people rather anxious. There was no reassuring by the hospital that, you know, we'll look at this, we'll look into how this is going. And actually it was quite a battle if you did drive up to the main road and want to turn. My real complaint, I guess, is the way that the hospital has changed the nature of the street. It has become much busier through traffic. Over time, I'm one of those grumbling residents who asked for some street trees or some street furniture, I don't know if it's called that, to be put in the street to actually encourage people to drive a little more slowly. I'm not really keen on having signs to say 40 kilometres an hour, and I doubt that they'd be, obeyed. But I do think that something needs to be done to the street to actually discourage people from driving really fast and dangerously. Outside our house, there have been 5 occasions of people driving fast, and a couple of those times people were on their mobile phone and they wiped out 2 cars that were visiting our house. So it's just become, especially going up the hill, it's become a real runway. It's become very fast, like a challenge. You go over one bump where our house is in the middle, and then the next bump, it's like you go as fast as you can to get to the top of the street. It's just really the way the street has been changed due to having a much busier building on the corner.
Ms McKenzie, would you mind moving towards wrapping up? Thanks very much.
Yes, I'll wrap up. I mean, even we even wanted a tree in the roundabout, and that's not been able to happen. That's really all I wanted to say. I just wanted to say something, because actually I've wanted to say something to council for quite a long time. I have requested that we would have some things done to the street to suggest that it's not just a through road between High Street and Cotham Road.
Thanks very much.
Yep.
Councillors, are there any questions for this presenter? Councillor Nolan.
Thanks, Ms McKenzie, for your submission. If I understand, or can I just clarify, so your concern is about people speeding on Adney Avenue. I'm quite familiar with Adney Avenue, as opposed to the parking issue, because isn't it the case that if we park at the hospital or park on the street, it's the same number of cars? So I guess I'm asking you, you're really concerned about the speeding?
I'm concerned with the way the nature of the avenue has changed. I guess, I mean, the hospital is only just opened, so I don't know how parking will impact. It sounds like they don't want to park down near our house, because it's that's where they'd have to park if they wanted unlimited parking. But it's really, I'm talking about the way the street has changed, and I think that could be considered in conjunction with the building of a fancy private hospital. I think you can't just put the hospital there and expect the street to accommodate it in any way that they intend.
Can I have a follow-up question through you, Chair?
Please.
I think it was a physio before it was a hospital.
It was a hospital before it was a hospital. It was a much quieter hospital. I think it wasn't, you would think, oh, it was a hospital before and now it's a hospital again. What's the difference? There's really a big difference, I think.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Elizabeth. You spoke about trees in the street and street furniture. I'm guessing here, but is the treatment in Normanby Avenue the sort of thing you're looking towards where there are sort of extensions out onto the road? Is that?
I think so. I think some way of communicating that this is not just a runway. We don't have nature strips and we don't have any street trees. When I probably years ago asked council if we could have street trees, they said there are so many large trees in that street, in people's gardens already, that that's not necessary. But I think we should have a slightly different way of approaching it now.
Thank you.
Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Ms Mackenzie, for your presentation. I'm keen to know over what period you think the nature of the traffic movements in Aideney Avenue has changed, given the hospital opened on the 18th of February.
Yeah, I think the nature of the street, the way the street is used has probably been changing for quite a while. I think it's just actually got a lot worse. I mean, we had trades vehicles lining the street, and that it just felt like it introduced a way of travelling in that street that was much, you know, it's a convenient way between High Street and Cotham Road, but it's really, the nature of it has really significantly changed since I asked council some years ago to consider changing the nature of the street.
And a second one, if I may. Do you think the speed humps that have been introduced in the street have helped modify the traffic behaviour?
Do you mean south of Park Hill Road? I mean north of Park Hill Road?
North and south. So there's the speed cushions near the cafe, near the roundabout.
Yeah. I don't think they impact on what happens south of Park Hill Road. The two speed bumps that are in the south end, which is the top end of the street, soon, like many years ago, they actually made them into higher bumps, and that lasted for a couple of weeks only. I think people just really complained, and they've gone back to being, I don't think they do much except encourage people to really accelerate after they go over the first one.
They just flatten a little over time. They're the rubber ones, but we can take it up with the traffic team. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. I guess I can absolutely understand your concerns about sort of change in traffic flow and the road being used potentially as a through road. But to help me make an assessment this evening with regards to the question on parking, do you think there's been an improvement or disimprovement from when it was Cotham Private Hospital? I understand that was a 60-bed hospital and there was only 27 car parks on site. So obviously this new hospital has only been in operation since February, but were there many staff from Cotham Private Hospital parking along the road when there were only 27 car parks?
There were, but it was mild.
Mild, okay. And that's with only 27 car parks on site. Okay, thank you very much.
Ms Mackenzie, that appears to have exhausted all the questions. You can return to the gallery. Thanks very much. I will now return to the officers for matters arising.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Ms Mackenzie, thank you for your submission. While notable points concerning the street trees and traffic calming, these are unable to be directly addressed by the planning amendment before us this evening, as we noted by a couple of the councillors. Ms Stubbs, again, thank you for your submission. The one thing I wanted to clarify was that the purpose of the amendment as outlined on the planning documentation, and I'll just read from the submission, this amendment is sought to ensure that the car parking area is maintained for use by patients, visitors and employees of the hospital only, and discourages the car park being accessed by the broader public for longer term parking, e.g. commuter parking, noting the site is within 100 metres of a tram stop, being the tram route 109 operating along Cotham Road.
Thanks very much. Councillors, are there any questions of officers tonight? Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. To the officers, it's common practice, isn't it, for council to review on-street parking restrictions if issues become a problem with the potential expansion of parking restrictions to areas that are unrestricted, or the introduction of resident parking permit schemes or the like?
Thanks, Chair. Happy to answer that. Yes, it is common practice. Our traffic and transport team will regularly review car parking in streets as circumstances change and look at whether particular restrictions or parking permit schemes are appropriate for that location to manage traffic and car parking issues in particular. So this is something that does happen regularly.
Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you. So as I understand it from officers, what we're saying is in the original planning permit was granted, it was to ensure that the parking was only utilised by patients and visitors. Is that necessarily irreconcilable with there being a charge?
Good question. Through yourself, Chair, no, they aren't. They are matters that could be managed separately. So we could have an expectation and requirement on the hospital to ensure the car park is used for patients and for visitors and for staff, whilst at the same time there being a charge system in place. Equally, there could be management of the car park where there is no charge for that purpose as well.
Thank you very much. And a quick one, do we have any influence over the pricing structure, or is it simply to either allow private charged parking or non-charged parking, or does the level of detail go down to us actually saying we'll accept this level of charge versus that level of charge?
Again, through yourself, Chair, the current proposal before you is that there is no change to the planning permit conditions. Our recommendation is that there is no introduction of a charge, and on that basis, there's no mechanism introduced into the planning permit that would enable council to have any say or control over car parking, the pricing structure. If there is an introduction of paid car parking, under the current, an amendment could be included which enables a variable pricing structure that will be applied by the hospital into the future. So that's one opportunity. A further opportunity would be having some control over the pricing, or have some automatic increment introduced that might be linked to CPI or other factors. This would be possible, but is not something that council would normally become involved in. It would be introducing quite a significant involvement or role for council on an ongoing basis in something that it wouldn't normally play a role.
And through you, Chair, I'd just add to that, a car parking management plan has been submitted with the application to amend the condition that refers to parking being charged or not. And that does specify at least that the 0 to 2 hour parking will be free. So at a very base level, there is that statement, and I believe that we would endorse that document if we were supporting the change.
Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question, but I foreshadow a motion when the time is right.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tournay.
Through you, Chair, I just have 2 or 3 questions, if I may so. First question is around Adney Avenue there is restricted parking, 2-hour parking, is that right? Around where the hospital is. So I'm really struggling to see how this is going to impact the amenity of local residents. If the charges are so low and the first 2 hours are free, I just can't see the impact on the local residents. I can see that there have been complaints, but why people would go to the hospital and park 250 metres away when they could park for $5 underneath? Is there something in particular that made you think that, or the traffic engineers? Can someone comment on that?
The key concern of council's traffic engineers was that it would be that staff and visitors would opt for the free parking in the northern portion of Adini Avenue, as opposed to going into the basement and potentially having to pay. It was just that free parking, unrestricted free parking, it is within 200 to 250 metres of the site, is more attractive than entering the basement, and that option would be favoured over entering the basement and potentially, paying a charge over the 2-hour time frame.
Okay. Just another question. On the flip side, I'm kind of struggling with the timing of this, that this hospital's just opened and the permit was issued very clearly on the basis of free parking being supplied. So is that part of the process that you think it should be running for longer before that assessment is actually made, or that amendment is allowed?
Through you, Chair. As I clarified earlier, the sole purpose when we received the application documentation was that it was to discourage non-hospital users from utilising the car park, and those being commuters on the tram that I specified. That application was made prior to the hospital being open. So, with the information before us and the engineers, we couldn't see the demand being there.
Thank you.
Chair, I might just add, absolutely, I think the passage of time and evidence to demonstrate that it's a problem that needs to be addressed would be something that we'd be looking for before any support for an amendment.
Thanks very much. Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to the officers. A couple of questions, if I may. The first is in relation to the precedent that other hospitals have in and around eastern Melbourne. I'm thinking of the Epworth, the St George, I'm familiar with the Cabrini. All of them have paid parking, similar structure I recall. In your response, have you looked into the operations of those hospitals and noted any particular concerns with how their paid parking arrangements work that justify why you are opposing this application?
Through you, Chair. I believe Council's traffic engineers were aware of some of the hospitals in the surrounding area and in other areas charging for parking, yes. However, even the closest hospital being St George's or St Vincent's, just further up Cotham Road, that there's a difference there in terms of it's a public use zone, so council has no control over permit conditions that may be applied to permits being granted there. In this instance, and we assess all applications on their merits, we have a neighbourhood residential zone and a permit that was granted to allow the hospital to use the land. It's a non-residential use, so our planning permit allows that use to occur. And therefore, conditions can be imposed to address potential amenity concerns, such as what came through in the objections received, and we've responded to those.
One further question, if I may, Chair. Would you accept that, I think we can all acknowledge that one of the one of the reasons, if not the main reason, for the proposed charging arrangement for this car park is to make money. I think we perhaps can accept that, as well as perhaps manage car parking better. But would you accept that it's in the owner's interests to have this car park full or well used, as distinct from a situation where if the rates were so high or so unappealing that the car park was empty? My point being that if the car park's mostly full because the owner of the facility wants to generate some income through the use of the car park, then isn't that what the car park's intended to do? It's intended to be filled by users of that hospital, doctors, nurses, staff, visitors, etc., for use of the car park, and therefore makes no difference whether it's charged or not. Do you understand my logic?
Certainly, Chair, through yourself, understand the point being made that if it is about creating an income stream, then there is a reason for the hospital to ensure the car park is full. That actually has not been what's been put in the application. What's been put in the application by the applicant is that this is a management system to prevent external public parking within the car park. So they haven't put it that it's about an income stream. They've put a different reason, that it's about managing other vehicles entering the car park and parking within the car park. But even if we have a scenario where it is about income stream, and whilst that might well be an objective, that you may well assume that the hospital wants to have it as full as possible, if it's half full or 3/4 full and the balance of parkers are parking within the residential street nearby, there's an impact or detrimental impact on parking in that street, even if it's only half of the people that would have otherwise parked in the car park.
Councillor Sinfield, your light's still on. Is that a question or are you just readying yourself for a motion?
I'm waiting when questions are exhausted.
Mr Osborne, Mr Friend Triera, thank you.
Thank you. Officers, would you have any comment as to the traffic management assessment that was attached to the application? It indicated, I think, 342 spaces available, 270 spaces in the immediate vicinity on street with a 21% occupancy rate at peak times. I'm just wondering, does that concur with council's data?
Through you, Chair. Council's traffic engineers did consider and were referred the application, and that included the traffic data provided by the permit applicant. Officers did not carry out any car parking surveys. However, the site was inspected on numerous occasions. However, the primary concern remains that the introduction of the paid parking will increase pressure on the nearby streets as drivers seek that alternative for the free parking.
And through you, Chair, just to add to that, there have been requests from residents nearby for changes to parking restrictions to increase restrictions, and the view there is that there isn't the impact at this point to warrant making those changes. So it's been looked at through another lens.
Thank you very much.
That appears to have exhausted questions now. Thank you very much. We'll now return to you, Councillor Sinfield, for your motion.
Thank you, Chair. The officers have prepared an alternate motion, which I think they should have at their disposal. That is the motion on the screen.
Do you need a moment or do you have a seconder?
I'm in search of a seconder. It has been circulated to colleagues this afternoon.
Councillor Osborne-Smith, are you happy to?
I'm happy to second.
Second. That's terrific. Are there any objections to the motion as it now appears on the screen? There are none.
Perhaps
Councillor Friend Pereira.
not necessarily an objection on, depending on the answer to my question. I'm just seeking clarification. So this motion would seek to allow charged parking on the site. Going back to the schedule, the pricing schedule, would this enshrine that schedule or a variable pricing schedule?
The change before you, through you, Chair, does not seek to endorse the schedule submitted with the application, other than the documentation we're requesting in point 3 there does set out for us an ability to endorse that document, which does set at a base level that 0 to 2 hours is free.
Councillor Baillieu, do you have are you in opposition to this motion?
Just confirming this would be in contravention of the officer's recommendations?
It is. You want to hold your opposed position?
For now, I'm willing to listen to debate.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Nolan.
No. Oh, just, sorry.
We're getting toward, should this be in debate?
No, I just wanted to clarify. So the 0 to 2 hours free, is that at council officers' prerogative to hold to that for, or can it be varied, the 0 to 2 hours free?
Thanks. Through yourself, Chair. That absolutely is the expectation that would be part of this amendment, that the application was for 0 to 2 hours free, and that's what would be included and enshrined within the endorsed car parking management plan that officers will be considering and approving.
Councillor Ibuki, your light's on. Is this to do with whether you're deciding you're in opposition or not, or a debate?
Yes, it is. So, and I'm sorry if the question, through you, Chair, I'm sorry if the question is a bit late, but is there any possibility with this amendment, whether this amendment could be actioned on a trial basis so that we could approve that amendment and then revise it or review it at a later stage?
This is the motion as it currently stands. That's not part of it. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, there could be an entertaining of a trial of a particular period. We would need to consider the wording for that and can work through that.
So I then say, Councillor Ibuki, do you want this to be further amended, or can you run with it as it currently stands?
I think I would be comfortable with an amendment so that the motion takes into account a trial basis.
Can I return to Councillor Sinfield? Are you prepared to accept that amendment to your amended motion?
On earlier officer advice, I don't think I am. I think it's best practice to make a decision on this, and should there be any consequences, which I don't think there will be for the neighbouring hinterland, then they can be addressed at that time. I'm happy to take officer advice.
We'll turn to that now. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I probably agree with that, and there would be very, very few or limited occasions where a trial through planning permit conditions is appropriate. So, perhaps to contradict the manager, I think in this situation it would not be something that would normally be invited. We'll end up with planning permit conditions that are of concern in different forums such as VCAT. If you introduce this sort of trial, I think it's a decision one way or the other.
Mr. Storer, did you wish to speak at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to ensure that councillors deliver the outcome they might have in their minds. I just wanted to raise a question for point 2 in particular. And on the assumption that the car parking management plan referred to on the 13th of August 2024 did not have in it provision for charging fees, I'm not sure on what basis we could argue that a plan launched now could be consistent with it. And that places the officers in a very difficult position when they are considering a plan which might be lodged and trying to determine what consistency actually means in that context, if I've understood the intention correctly.
Chair, can I suggest an adjournment?
And Chair, my question was going to be the same as our Chief Executive Officers, so I'm going to switch my light off because that was my concern.
You're moving, we have amendment at this point in time. Do we have a seconder for that?
An adjournment, not an amendment.
Sorry, adjournment. Do we have a seconder for that?
Happy to second, thank you.
Thank you. We have all in favour? We have an adjournment.
Thank you.
To resume.
So moved.
Seconder? Councillor Hollingsworth.
So second.
Thank you very much. All in support? Meeting resumed. Councillor Sinfield.
Put my light back on. Thank you. Yes, the motion on the screen has been slightly nuanced and I commend it to my colleagues.
Do we have a seconder for the amended motion? Yeah. Councillor Osborne-Smith, probably if you're happy, we'll keep you as a seconder if that's possible.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
You happy with that? You're happy with that? Okay, fantastic. So, I'll return again. Do we have any opposition to the motion as placed on the screen? So, we do have opposition, so we move into debate. Councillor Sinfield, would you like to speak?
I would, thank you, Chair. Thank you to officers for amending the wording to provide some clarity here. The amended condition 17 refers to the permit, whereas the car parking management plan that was submitted dated 13 August 2024 didn't reference paid or unpaid parking. So it doesn't need to be a revised parking management plan. It is endorsing the plan that's already been provided. So Cotham Private Hospital, for those of you who are not familiar, opened in 1970 and was a 60-bed hospital with 27 car parks. It's now a brand new hospital with the same 60 beds, although they're new, snazzy ones, and 78 off-street spaces. So that's an increase of 51 car parks off the street. The new hospital opened on the 18th of February. I would suggest that there hasn't been, in fact, a change in driver behaviour in the local neighbourhood in the last 2 months. Parking seems to still be coping very well in the neighbouring streets, and as we've already heard, there is 2-hour restricted parking in all of the residential streets in the nearby vicinity. Cotham Road, that is on the corner of this site, is free all-day parking with the exception of the AM and PM clearways. So if somebody wanted to park there all day, they could, with the exception of those AM and PM clearways. The car parking, as we've already heard, being provided is 2 hours free for patients and visitors and paid parking otherwise. And I would suggest that at $5 per day, that is the cheapest parking I've ever heard of, I pay a discounted rate in the city of $19 a day, which I'm very grateful for. Parking in the CBD is $55, $60 a day. So $5 a day, I think, will appeal greatly to the staff and to the patients and visitors. As Councillor Osborne-Smith said earlier, it is in the hospital's best interests to keep downward pressure on the cost of that and keep the car park full. They didn't build a very expensive basement car park to have it sit there empty. It says in the report, and I quote, the application of 1.52 spaces per bed used for the proposed hospital would suggest that the historic hospital on the site would have generated a car parking demand in the order of 92 spaces. The demand is well in excess of the historic car parking supply of 27 spaces and would suggest that there would have been a historic off-site reliance of up to 65 spaces. So the fact that the new hospital is providing 78 positively addresses any car parking needs that the hospital may generate. The arrangement for other hospitals, as we heard earlier at St George's, just 100 metres up the road, is different because of the zoning that applies to the land, which I think is really inconsistent with the fact that they're both hospitals, they're both on Cotham Road, and they both generate a need for parking. But let's not take away from the huge service that both of those hospitals do for the local community, and the fact that we have a brand new, no gap private hospital in Kew is such a gift to the local community. For the first time ever, we can have chemo treatment in Kew. Now, I think that's just such a wonderful addition to the services that we provide locally, and the impost for the last couple of years during construction has been immense on the neighbourhood, but the gift that it gives us all long term is incredible. The model of the hospital care is also extraordinary, and I think that we will see this become a prototype for healthcare into the future. I think what we're doing here is contributing to the benefit to the community. I really don't think that there's going to be parking issues down around Victoria Park, down the northern parts of Aidney Avenue, or on the southern side of Cotham Road as a result. It is connected by a tram, and I think the rest of the application speaks for itself. It's a really minor amendment, I think, in the scheme of things, and I'll wrap up any other issues that are raised in debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Osborne-Smith, do you wish to speak at this time?
I'll say just a few words, if I may, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. I endorse many of your comments there, and that is why I'm supporting this revised amendment. I would also add that in addition to the numerous private hospitals in the area all charging for car parking, there is evidence presented by the traffic engineers in this application that 95% of visitors are expected to park under 2 hours, which demonstrates to me the car park will be well used, and I don't see a tremendous concern for those visitors parking beyond that time, taking up residential areas. In addition, there is notification that reports that there's 200 plus sufficient on-street parking in the area. So in my experience, that's considerable. So I don't share concerns that car parking in surrounding residential streets outside the 2 hour area will be hugely detrimental, that would outweigh the reasonable request in this application. So that's why I will be supporting it. I'll just conclude by saying that in my opinion, car parking or paid car parking is not unreasonable as a principle. And I think the idea of free car parking will over time become a thing of the past. I think we all need to acknowledge cars take up space, whether that's ground level, on streets, basements or in multi-decks, and that space has to be paid for one way or another, either by the community or by private owners. So that's what I would say in support of this revised amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now hear from other councillors if you wish to speak at this time.
Thank you.
Councillor Cookie.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The request to remove the free of charge, for me, doesn't make sense. It's not logical for me. There are other mechanisms by which the hospital can ensure that the car park is used by visitors, patients and doctors. You do not need to charge in order to ensure that the car park is used in the manner in which they applied for the original permit, and they also stated that it would be free of charge. So there could be other mechanisms such as, permits that are sent out, dockets that are stamped at the hospital or whatever. I also think that regardless of $5 being $5, there are people who will change their parking behaviour based on whether there's a fee or not. And despite the fact that it's a minor charge, I don't want that load placed on the residents of the street, from which we've already heard one resident who has talked about the impact to their amenity and the traffic on the street. Car parking is another thing that I hear from many residents is something that is of significant concern. And lastly, I guess, I accept the officer's recommendation and I find that's a sound recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak at this time, or Councillor Franco?
Okay, look, I'll be supporting Councillor Sinfield's motion. I think my colleague, Councillor Osborne-Smith, made the points that quite effectively. I think it's reasonable to expect that parking is something that needs to be paid for, and the idea that commuter parking should be made free of charge is something that's a principle of the past, and there's a cost to the provision of parking, and that the commuter parking should be free of charge, and other forms of getting to a workplace should be paid for, but not commuter parking is something which also has environmental impacts, and in terms of modern day looking forward in terms of environmental impacts, this is something that needs to be taken into account. In relation to the on-street impacts, I do accept that it's possible that there could be some displacement to the neighbouring streets, but Council does manage and monitor on-street parking restrictions. We can and should and will, if there is an impact, revise the parking restrictions. That could include extending the areas where parking restrictions are currently in place, and in neighbouring areas, for example, around St George's Hospital, we have parking permit schemes in place, and it's reasonable to introduce those to protect any amenity impacts should they occur, although I expect they'll be pretty negligible in this instance. Thank you.
Councillor Tawney.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Absolutely no doubt this is a great hospital. I was there at the opening. It's a superb facility and it's a great addition to the neighbourhood and to Burundara. I'm very thankful for that. And I agree with Councillor Osborne-Smith. I fully support the idea that we pay for parking. But the issue at hand is whether the introduction of paid parking will impact the local residents and how it will impact the local residents. And I agree with Councillor Abuki. People do change their behaviour. $5 now, maybe $10, maybe $20. We don't know down the track. And I think it will have an impact on local residents. So I'll be supporting the council officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Bowdew.
Put simply, I don't feel that the services provided are necessarily as relevant in this case as Councillor Sinfield raised. I think there are alternate options to manage parking in this location, including signage that indicates the parking is clearly for staff and patients. I know personally I would park in the street to avoid the charge, and many people my age would, and many of our older residents too. I don't believe that parking behaviour won't change as a result of the introduction of charges, and I have to admit I see this mainly as a fundraising measure in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and I think that ultimately impacts the vulnerable and sick more than anyone else. And as a result, I support the officer recommendations that this permit not be approved.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Look, I'll be supporting this amendment. I think but that support's incredibly based on that we keep the 0 to 2 hours, it's predicated on we keep the 0 to 2 hours free on the hospital car park. So I think in terms of the hospital providing this amenity, the 78 car parks, the safety, we certainly want people to be doing drop-offs and parking at the hospital. We don't want people trying to do a drop-off out the front and then I'll go park the car, I'll be back, you know, oh, hang on, looks like there's a staff there, just go over there and I'll move the car. So I think the amenity, the people building this amenity are entitled to, within reason, to run it the way they do want to run it without, and our job is to make sure there are not seriously adverse consequences. So yeah, with that as the rider, free for 0 to 2 hours, sort of in perpetuity, then I'm supporting the amendment.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting Councillor Sinfield's motion for many of the reasons already mentioned by my councillor colleagues. I believe it's imperative that there be a facility providing parking, which this facility clearly does, and the nominal fee proposed is very well considered for the duration of time that it provides, for the convenience it provides, and Councillor Sinfield mentioned earlier that this is a no-gap hospital, so there is minimal out-of-pocket, and to pay for parking, I think it's still a very feasible and practical solution to ensure that the majority of people do use that car park so that they're not putting burden on street parking. And I believe that it will entice people still to use the parking for that nominal fee, and if that fee becomes exploited in the years to come, then the subject can possibly be addressed again if it's not being managed in an appropriate manner to the detriment of the community. I think also 2-hour limits is very difficult for a lot of people to navigate, and we've talked about elderly and we've talked about people having access to the hospital. This charge enables that in a way that is minimal cost, so I fully support it.
Does that finish debate? I think it probably does. I will now put the motion. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Oh, those against. I can count, I can subtract, but those against? 3. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Oh, abstentions. We have 1 abstentions. Abstaining? 1. Thank you. We can now move on to general business. I believe we have an item of general business. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. With your indulgence, I would like to speak briefly on a matter that's very dear to our community. On Wednesday, the 30th of April, which was only last week, I attended the parliamentary inquiry into the state government planning reform, planning provision amendments, VC 257, VC 267 and VC 274 that was gazetted in February this year. The panel comprised of representatives from Liberal, Labor, Greens and an impeccably well-presented chair, independent member, Mr David Ettershank, who adhered to a very tight, strict and equitable schedule. I was there just as an observer, but obviously the reforms are something that the Burundara Council's been very involved with from the concept. So I just wanted to make note that the attendees on the day I was there had invested considerable time in preparing written submissions that had been lodged, but they also then attended as presenters as well. And on the day that I was there, it was Christina Brannigan from the Burundara Heritage Group, Jane Olden from the Burundara Community Group, And there were senior officers from the Municipal Association of Victoria, representing all 79 councils. And I'm delighted to say that I had the privilege of hearing our Mayor, Councillor Tawney, and our Director of Urban Living, Mr Scott Walker. And they were joined by directors of Bayside, Casey, Kingston, Moonee Valley, Stonington and Whitehorse councils. I also just wanted to acknowledge that there is an incredibly good submission put forward by an organisation called Charter 29, led by the RMIT Professor Michael Buxton, supported by 4 leading architects and urban planners, and that submission is also on the website if anyone wishes to view it. In essence, the amendments have been described by some concerned stakeholders as prescriptive cookie-cutter, one-size-fits-all blanket approach that dictates to councils that they are to subscribe to what is formerly known as the 70-30 rule, where metropolitan councils predominantly have an expectation that they will increase capacity of residential housing facilities up to 80+% in their already, what some would argue is very congested communities. In summary, essence of the planning provisions refer to the housing statement implementation of use zones that were referred to initially as walkable catchments, now termed the housing choice and transport zone, activity centres and built form overlays. There's been some significant codification changes to clause 55 and 65 in Res Code, designed to increase density, height and footprint, particularly on sites of 2 or more dwellings, and with the removal of contextual analysis for development and implementation of the deemed to comply approach rather than the performance-based approach, which as a consequence has the power to remove third-party right of appeal from the responsible authority and impacted property owners living near and beside developments. Now, I will not be necessarily all negative on this, but I just wanted to put the context of what the inquiry has been designed for, and that is to hear issues from those for and against, and those that believe that there are still some matters that need further interrogation and work to improve the reforms or possibly revoke. The presenters in attendance that I heard all agreed that more needs to be done by all levels of government to adequately address the growing needs of appropriately designed housing to accommodate the growth in population, current and future growth, in a balanced, well-considered approach. It is also overwhelmingly acknowledged by certainly those in attendance on the day that councils are best positioned to undertake meaningful deliberative engagement with their communities to identify appropriate corridors and precincts that have the capacity to absorb additional housing growth. And typically that is what councils have done and councils will to continue to do. As councils know best how to respect, conserve, retain sympathetic elements of neighbourhood character, including highly valued heritage overlay precincts, without compromise. As we evolve as a society in a culturally rich and diverse shire, such as the original Shire of Boroondara, we do have a proud history, and we understand, that there is need to have feasible consideration to factor in environmental capacity and impacts. And it needs to be done incrementally, not ad hoc, not in haste, and not impulsively. So we need to recognise the history of our forebears and the commitment to our community that has been done to build the Boroondara we have today. Councils, with the guidance of their expert professional discipline planners, are tasked
Councillor Hollingsworth, I'll have to ask you to wrap up if you wouldn't mind, thank you.
One more paragraph. Are tasked with the development of long-term strategic structure plans. And I believe, certainly in Boroondara, that our Director of Planning and his highly professional team have put together a very sound strategic plan or Burundara for the activity centres that have been done to place. So I just wanted to say that it was beneficial to go and listen, and there was a lot of commonality in the comments made by all presenters and all reports written. And I look forward to seeing how the inquiry now moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth, for that very worthwhile mention. Councillor Tourney.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth, for that very thorough summary and for also attending those sessions, which was very impressive to have sat there through many hours of presentations. And I don't really have much to add except to say that we were there to emphasise that Burundara fully supports the need for increased housing density in our municipality. And really the essence of what I spoke about was that, and that, you know, councils should be the ones doing that planning. And we were very clear about that on the day. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Councillor Bayou.
Just a note to say that Ida Hobbit's coming up next week on the 17th of May, and there'll be a number of council events organised around that, and I'd encourage all my fellow councillors to advertise those events.
Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. In the theme of planning, because it's a planning meeting, I just note that the comment made by the Mayor that we fully support the increased housing density, I'm not quite sure that that's entirely consistent with the resolutions of Council to the extent that the state government has imposed upon us. So it's my recollection that we support a continued increase in housing stock across Burundara, but not to 67,500 additional dwellings.
Thank you. I think that concludes general business for this evening. Is there any urgent business? There is none. Confidential business? There is none. Before I close this meeting, I want to thank all of you who have joined us this evening. I declare the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting closed. Thank you.